I'm Sarah Richardson, a principal here at This Week Health, where our mission is healthcare transformation powered by community. This is Flourish Sound Bytes, unfiltered conversations with healthcare leaders. Let's get real. Welcome to Flourish Sound Bytes, and today I am joined by Tyler Barhydt, a seasoned technology executive with deep expertise in cloud infrastructure, FinOps, and enterprise architecture. Over the past few years, Tyler has led a significant cloud transformation, moving away from on-prem systems to embrace a modern, scalable, cloud-first approach. But this wasn't just a technology shift. It was an organizational evolution involving board education, cost transparency, and aligning IT strategy with the business. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. Other things great for our audience to know. You and I have been friends for probably a decade now. We've worked together in previous organizations, stayed in touch, and that's kind of what it's all about. The HIT world's a lot smaller than most people realize. So let's jump in. And I want to talk about cloud strategy and board engagement because you've been leading a major cloud transformation journey. And I'm curious, what were the key considerations that led your organization to commit fully to shutting down on-prem?
It was really, we'd kind of grown through a lot of acquisition. So we had a lot of fragmentation. We had data center sprawl. There was, cost consideration. We needed some flexibility in what we were doing to either as we grew or shrank in that manner, right? We had to be able to be there for that and kind of adjust, as well as just making sure that we had, kept the care journey in mind. We were enhancing our operations and kind of looking to limit and deal with either current or future risks and kind of mitigate that as well.
And so, from a leadership perspective, how did you start to prepare the board and the executive team for such a bold shift? Because some of the business language has to help build alignment and confidence.
Yeah, I mean, we have, like anywhere else, right? You have your typical kind of business case and intake processes and things like that. So you're going to do your cost benefit analysis. You're going to go through ROIs. You've got different financial models. I will say we went through quite a number of iterations around that to get kind of this overall migration and kind of optimization project kind of in play, and just really needed to kind of show, hey, if we keep doing what we're doing, what's that look like, right? In that CapEx model, what if we shift to more of a consumption-based model? And it was really about explaining it that way and the ability to kind of either again shrink or grow with the business. And in this case, we were contracting a little bit, so we needed to be able to kind of exit a number of things pretty rapidly. A lot of it was around explaining the cost avoidance, the savings, hey, we've got all this wasted infrastructure, now like we have shrunk some things and we're stuck with what is currently there and on-prem. So you've got all this extra infrastructure laying there that you thought you were going to use, and you just walk them through that model. And really, it was all about data. If you can show that model, show them the data and say, okay, here's what's going to happen. This is what it looks like, and we're going to be able to shift. They actually bought it pretty well, and they were kind of headed a little down that path when I got here. So it was a little bit easier, I would say, for me, because they were kind of somewhat bought in. And I was able to kind of just get them kind of over the line and understanding in a more data-driven mindset. So
you check the box, you're like, we are going. How have you measured the maturity of your cloud platform over time? And how do you adapt that roadmap for the business as their needs change as well?
Yeah, we're still in the middle of it. We were, 11 data centers, I think, when I got here, and some of those full-blown colos, some of them repurposed office space, typical stuff that you see out there. We're down to 4. We're headed to 0. I used to say 1 or 2. Now I'm back to 0. I'm not even sure I say 0 to 1 anymore, just because we've had so much success with it. So in the middle of this, our ServiceNow platform has been evolving. So it's really been around showing the progress of these applications and that we've either rationalized. So we had a ton of decoms. A ton of stuff that just didn't need to be there anymore. So we looked at, here's what we thought it was going to cost when we migrated. Here's what it costs after we migrated it. Here's how we've optimized it with FinOps. So we really focused in on our provisioning times, our typical ITSM and ITIL metrics from an operations perspective and stability throughout that. So just typical things like that. Time to stability is a big one. So as we go live, one of the things we implemented here for this that we weren't doing with a lot of our other projects was a kind of an operational readiness checklist, something as simple as that, of just going through each of the areas and saying, okay, do we have everything we need to actually operate this thing when we get there? Whether we had it today or not, or before we moved it is another story, but it helps kind of grow that ability in our, we track those types of success metrics as we went through from a project perspective.
Well, philosophy of yours is the importance of not getting locked into technology. And so, how do you evaluate the tools and the platforms for some of that long-term flexibility that you need?
Yep. This is really about just when you set the strategy and you kind of set where you're trying to go to get to, you just have to go back and look at it, right? How do you check yourself against that each time? There's times where you get running, your head's down, and it's okay. I better lift your head up and kind of look. Am I still heading in that direction? Because you're going to run into some things along the way that you might shift a little bit to the right or left, but you want to make sure you don't do a complete 180 and turn around, right? So you've always got to kind of know where you're going. So we try to do things in a way that it doesn't necessarily matter where it's going to live. You have to be flexible and you work with your partners. You're doing POVs and POCs. And sometimes there's been a couple of times where I'm like, you know what? If you'd asked me, I would have said that's the one. And 3, 4 months later, I went, oh, we totally went a different direction and I was wrong. Right. So my early analysis of something was off, and being flexible enough to go, okay, we found the right answer in the end, but you've just got to kind of remain flexible with it. Just not, the beauty of the cloud again is you're not getting locked into something for 3 to 5 years. You don't have to get locked into something for 3 to 5 years.
You don't have to. And yet, the Broadcom situation was a curveball for many people in our industry and continues to be so. How did your team respond, and what was the creative path that you've taken since then?
So I think as folks are aware, right, the kind of, hey, we're going to reduce SKUs, we're going to give you a whole bunch of extra stuff, and we're going to charge you more for it, kind of regardless of what you have left in your environment. So I'll leave it as that as the Broadcom situation. We went heavy, aggressive from a decom perspective. And a lot of that had to do with where we were and there wasn't a lot of life cycle management going on, things like that. So it was a very target rich environment from that perspective. So we minimized as much as we could, and then we had to evaluate what are our options, right? So how do we try to eliminate enough of where we're tied into Broadcom that we have the ability to kind of walk away? And what we chose was to, like, okay, let's go talk to AWS, let's talk to Azure, let's talk to Oracle. They all have some version of VMware in their cloud, right? And so we went with Azure AVS, which is their version of that. It was extremely fast and very successful. And surprisingly, it was literally zero impact to the business. We could have done this without telling anybody. They would not have noticed. So it went really well for us, but we had to kind of convince our own internal folks, get a few of those under our belt, but we moved a significant portion of one of our data centers, or all of it basically, and then another significant portion of our other on-prem in a very short time frame. And we had a little bit of vendor help and stuff like that. They were very surprised with how effective we were at it, but we went with get off of this stuff as fast as we can. And now it's a pathway for us to get the rest of one of our data centers. We still are working to move some more out of it. It's got a couple of things that are kind of locked us in there, but we'll leverage that. And it doesn't hurt us to move from on-prem to Azure AVS, even though AWS is our primary. We're still going to migrate out of AVS into AWS for the majority of that. So it didn't limit us on kind of our options for how we were going to migrate workloads.
And the win, to your point, is doing all of that where you had to let somebody know, but you actually didn't need to let somebody know. So I love the conversations when you get to say, oh yeah, we moved all this stuff over the weekend and nobody noticed, even though they were on deck to be aware of it. So great way to build that trust and collateral to keep doing the things that you want.
Yep.
And you created a dedicated FinOps capability within your team early on. Tell us why that was so important, and how has it shaped your ability to manage costs and transparency? Specifically for our listeners, going to the cloud can be very expensive if you don't know how to manage that expense.
Yep. Jokingly, I tell people all the time they print money for us. So it's really about the data. They allow you to kind of look at this and drive decisions based on kind of that financial aspect. And then we all know that's how it works, right? Follow the money, you're going to follow most of your decisions. It did immediately build trust with the business and with others in IT, and it exposes kind of historically hidden costs or the lack thereof, right? So when we all joke around that the business thinks that, oh, compute is free, storage is free, because they don't see it, right? We've historically not done show back very well in an on-prem or heavy capex type environment. Sometimes you allocate it out, sometimes you don't. It just depends on how you kind of do it. Once you get there, you're now looking at everything, and then you can apply your wasted infrastructure and understanding what you have on-prem. You're applying that in the cloud environment as well, so you get very consistent reporting and everything else. We looked at kind of instituting monthly operational reviews that were going on, and we got FinOps kind of tagged into that, so they start to see it, right? So the number of folks that kind of don't realize what their applications cost the business well, I don't know if it's surprising or not. It's most of them don't know. They don't pay attention to it. They just kind of, we run, and like you leave it up and running and it's all fine. But this is one of those areas where I'm kind of like, I wouldn't go to the cloud without it. So this is why most people or some people have returned back to on-prem, because they think it's cheaper. If you do this right with FinOps, you're not going to have that problem. You're going to have winners and losers in that mix, right? Some stuff's going to be a little more expensive, some it's going to be cheaper, but you have to manage it tighter than what I think you're used to from an on-prem perspective.
Well, and bringing those groups together for those conversations is so just unequivocally important. To your point, people don't know how much certain things cost. When you get in front of the cost allocation models and the understanding of the cloud prior to going there, then that desire to have 0 data centers, which truly there's some legacy stuff every once in a while needs to float around and on-prem or in a closet somewhere. But that ability to truly be able to leverage that environment is a massive strategic win. And so for CIOs and CTOs who might be considering a similar shift, what are the top 2 pieces of advice that you would offer?
Be flexible, willing to kind of fail fast. You're used to making 3 to 5 year decisions, and whether you get in trouble for that, or you're either a hero or a zero for that decision you made for the 5-year thing. It's going to change, and you don't have to worry about that as much in this case, right? There's more flexibility in it, so just be prepared for that. Retool yourself, reinvent yourself. You've got to think about things in different ways, and I think that's one of the big ones, is just being able to kind of, hey, this is how we've always managed on-prem. You're going to do things differently. You can make some quick decisions and go, oops, that one wasn't quite right, but I can adjust it, and I can adjust it quickly. And I know you said 2, but I'd throw in just admit when you don't know something, right? Leverage partners, bring them in, leverage the vendor programs that are out there. There's all kinds of, you're going to end up in the double bubble thing where you're going to have to pay for stuff on-prem, and that's always part of that, getting them convinced it's okay. You're going to be dealing with that double cost of there and in the cloud while you're moving it in your decommon before you can actually, shut down your data centers and recoup those costs. So I think it's just be willing to leverage those things. There's a ton of programs out there with all of them that get you the discounts and commitments and EDPs and all that kind of stuff.
Which is why you want FinOps to help manage all those particulars and have a person that's they're dedicated to do. Here's what I loved about going to the cloud is, to your point, when you have to make that quick correction or something different, it's a keystroke change. It is not the physical labor like it once was and hours of downtime and reconfiguring, etc. It is keystroke configurations when you go to that infrastructure as code space. It is a pretty fascinating and fun place to be. Harder to get to in some cases, but you've shown time and again that it is possible. I mean, decades of doing this. And that's one of the reasons I always appreciated working with you is, oh, well, if Tyler's involved and his teams are on this, then here's what we can expect. No, I'm serious. I mean, think of 12 to 20, that's like a win. We've came from environments together where 50 rounds of conversations, and you're like, by the time you get approval, you're like, I don't even want to do it anymore. But you have shrunk that equation significantly.
Yeah, and we had just a little M&A example, right? Is it's like, hey, we had an application that we were going to get rid of and didn't need. Someone was willing to kind of take it from us, and it was already in the cloud, right? So it was like, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, but it was pretty much as easy as like, give them, we're going to turn over the account. They give them their credit card, and off you go. and your 10K a month or whatever that thing was costing you, it went away, right? It's not there the next day. So there's this rapid. Now, again, the reverse of that, without FinOps, you spin up a whole bunch of stuff and you're not paying attention, the bill can rise pretty quickly too. So you got to keep an eye on it, but it's good stuff. I love the model. It's been fun to make that shift, even in my career.
Yep. So people listening are like, FinOps, what? I need this whole FinOps team. Like, call Tyler. He can help you and really work through some of the ideas for certain. Are you ready for speed round?
Sure.
All right, here we go. What is one tech trend you are most excited about right now? And you can't say the cloud.
No, it's funny. Like, I don't know how I got through, an entire, interview or podcast without saying AI. So I guess I have to say AI just to make sure I stay up with what's going on. I do think there's so much potential with it, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I would say there's still a lot of kind of fragmentation with even our use cases and where we're thinking about using it. And you got a whole bunch of folks that are just kind of out. So you got to get some control of it, but you want to kind of let folks experiment. There's just, again, huge potential. There's a lot that can be done. I think you run some risk of where you get locked in again. Like, there's all these little ones out there. Somebody eventually is going to buy them and gobble them all up. And so it's a little bit of a gamble on some stuff, but there's so much potential and really cool stuff that's going on with it that it's like, how do you dive in and get more involved in it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. What's your go-to method for stress relief during a high-stakes decision cycle?
My easy answer is to get outdoors, whether it's camping, fishing. I'm out in Colorado, so there's a lot of opportunity to do those types of things. We're in a kind of a remote first culture, so there's, it's super easy for me if I'm like, sometimes it's just colder in my basement. So I'm like, all right, I got to go upstairs and go outside and warm up. But being able to just step outside and step away from it for a little bit is typically enough. I'm in, kind of a treat area, so that's nice. The other one that's kind of funny is there's a little local barbershop in my the town that I'm in. So I go down there, I get the straight razor shave, beard trim up and all that. So the hot towel shave thing's pretty nice. I'd say that's my one self-care thing that I do, which is kind of fun, but that'd be my go-to, I guess.
I like hearing the guys are basically going to the beauty shop to get a little bit of a,
it's a barber shop.
Get coiffed up, get ready to go, etc. Well, your beard looks very nice today. So there you go. There's a win. All right, last one. Most underrated leadership trait in infrastructure roles.
I'm not quite sure if I'd call it a trait or not. I think it's really realizing that infrastructure exists to support the business. All the blinky lights, all the stuff that's really cool and the technology and some of that stuff we only exist to support the business and to like implement those things that actually matter. So I don't geek out too much on some of that technology, or it's really not why we're here. I've worked at a couple of places now that talk about IT for IT, and it drives me nuts because I'm not a fan of that either. But I would say it's having a core that's built on kind of servant leadership, creating teams where you empower them. You need to enable them to make decisions and to make mistakes. And, I'll say I didn't say make the right decisions because they have to be able to fail, right? You have to be able to allow your folks to fail, but also be empowered and know that they're not going to, get beat up or whatever if they make the wrong decision kind of thing. So I think just enabling your teams and growing them and that kind of front is where I try to focus, I guess.
No, it's a great trait. And also one of the hallmarks of why whenever you go somewhere, people follow you. And a lot of people we've worked with in the past are all with you where you are today. And it's always fun to know that I can make one ping to like 5 of the guys that used to be able to hang with every day. Thank you so much for just your vision, your leadership, your time today. It's really a testament to the constant reinvention of the infrastructure space, the things we need to be learning and doing, and you building teams and working for organizations that allow you to do all of those things. So thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Or see you at a city tour at dinner soon. And for all of you listening, thanks for tuning in. That's all for now. That's Flourish Sound Bytes. Find your community at thisweekhealth.com/subscribe. Every healthcare leader needs a community to learn from and lean on. Share the wisdom. That's all for now.